my name's Dr. Adam Booth and welcome to another lockdown edition of Quantum Source. Now, I'm sure you remember early in the lockdown that one of our favourite hobbies was stockpiling stuff, and that meant that certain basic commodities like toilet roll were in very short supply. As a consequence of that, people started buying wet wipes, and then they did what you do with a wet wipe, and then they flushed it down the toilet, and the water companies started to panic because of this massive influx of wet wipes, because as we all know, you chuck the wet wipes down the drain, they start blocking up the sewers, you get burst mains, and you potentially give birth to whole new fatbergs. And actually, I understand that we can go now live to Past Life Adam for a quick sewerage update. Hi, Future Adam. Yeah, it's Past Life Adam here, and here are these guys. What are they doing? Working hard on a Sunday, sorting out the sewer. Good effort, guys. Absolutely. Anyway, back to you, Future Adam. Thanks very much, Past Life Adam. Really important sewerage update there. So today on Quantum Source, we are talking sewers and sewer technology. What goes on in the ground beneath your feet once you think that you've forgotten about it? Is it all going to come back to haunt you in the future because you also chucked a load of wet wipes down there? And today's speaker is Dr. Raffaella Villa. She is a reader in environmental engineering at Montfort University, and she was one of the researchers who first identified the growing, quite literally, problem of fatbergs. So we're going to be giving her a bell in just a second. The recommended source, well, as always, fascinating facts are best served with something refreshing. And I've got this, which, it might be a similar colour to drain cleaner, but it isn't. It is a Tanmar prickly pear liqueur from Malta. It's all right. It's tooth-achingly sweet, but all the same, it will do you a lot less damage than if you did actually drink drain cleaner. Don't do it. It's just a colour similarity. So we'll give Raffaella a call, and I'll see you in a minute. Cheers. And good evening, Rafi. There you are. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. What about you?
I'm very good. And I should just say to the Quantum Source audience, you're not going crazy. We tried to record this 3 weeks ago and we had massive technical issues. And in the interim period, yes, I have shaved my beard and I've had a bit of a trim. So you're not going crazy. I am less hairy than I was 5 seconds ago. So it's all good. When you come up from a sewer, presumably you need a good stiff drink, and you could recommend me a drink for lockdown.
Yeah, okay. So I have become very partial to British drinks, and this is my gin and tonic. I never had it before I came to the UK, but this is one of my favorite now.
Well, cheers then.
Yes.
Okay, so as I understand it, you were one of the pioneers of research into fatbergs and understanding fatbergs, and that's really what we're going to talk about today. Have we sort of come on a long way since those days, or are we still facing the same problems?
Yeah, I think we started understanding a little bit more, and we know now how we need to manage. Well, the water company know how to manage or try to manage the problem. The science behind fatberg formation is still quite unknown because a lot of the processes that goes on in the sewers are still pretty unknown.
Right.
It's a bit of a complicated system.
Okay.
And so you got temperature, you got flows, you got organic matter, different contaminants. So it's kind of a bit of a messy science, let's put it this way.
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of like science at the real dirty edge. So, congratulations for taking one for the team and getting involved.
So before we start sharing the screen and the presentation, I'd like to do a little experiment because it's part of what I'm trying to explain tonight. So this is lockdown science. I don't have any flasks. This is kind of my homemade flasks.
Right.
So there's just water in these two jars. And what I want to show you is the difference between wipes, flushable wipes, and toilet paper. So this is just toilet paper. Got some scissors. I'm going to cut a couple of sort of strips of toilet paper. So here we go. A couple of strips. Now I'm going to put them into the jar, and give it a shake. So the toilet paper is now in the jar, in the water. I don't want to name and shame. It's just that I want to show you that the labels say biodegradable and flushable.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that they're not biodegradable. They are biodegradable toilet tissue, but I want to show you what happens in the sewers. So again, these are just normal wet wipes. I'm going to cut this more or less the same amount of wipe. So this is 2 strips of wipe, and I'm going to put them in water. And we give it another shake. So we now got toilet paper and wipes. Give it a shake. And in 20 minutes, we're going to look at them again, and I'll show you why. I want to show you this experiment. Okay, so Fatberg. Fatberg is, well, I started to work on Fatbergs in 2008. At the time, the problem was mainly looked from the fat, oil, and grease point of view. So we used to call them fog. It was only after the 2014 Whitechapel Fatberg that name was created. Fatberg are not just a UK problem. There's a lot of Fatberg around the world. There's some in America. I think they started the science before us, a couple of years before us. Singapore has got a lot of problem with blockages, but also Australia. And in Australia in particular, wipes are a big problem. Okay. And especially now in lockdown, when we had that initial sort of scarcity of toilet paper, right. People really flush things that they shouldn't have been flushed.
Yeah. I find that really interesting because especially after the Whitechapel Fatberg, I kind of assumed that Fatbergs were a feature of kind of London's Victorian sewer network. But then obviously you're suggesting that places like Singapore, Sydney, cities that I think are much more modern and maybe don't suffer from that level of Victorian engineering. But now you're saying that the Fatbergs still exist there.
Yeah, they're not as big because, as you said, the sewers are much smaller and they don't, Fatberg don't form in every sewer. So you got to have the condition for the Fatberg to grow. Okay. But yeah, that kind of unflushable together with the fat-rich discharge does create a kind of deposit and hard deposit in the sewers. Okay. So yeah, they're maybe not as big as ours, but they do have it.
Right.
So why are we interested in Fatberg? Well, when you got a Fatberg blockages in whatever place in the sewers, either in the mains or in the drainages, that obviously cause a back flush of sewage water. That if that is done in the drain, it will flood the premises. If it's done in the pumping station, for example, the water will overflow into the environment, on roads, on on grass, and obviously that will have an impact on us and on the animals. But also we got an impact at the treatment plant. So this material that is kind of rich of oil arrives on the water treatment plant and form layers of floating fat that obviously impact on the treatment process. So in 2017, I think the cleanup cost for the UK water industry was around £88 million. So it's a big cost. Yeah, it's not just. So we kind of, me and a colleague of mine at Montfort University, we kind of work on these blockages for a while, and kind of we were involved into some of the program around that famous Whitechapel Fatberg, initially with the Museum of London, and then with the program Fatberg Autopsy on the BBC. And so I had the pleasure of analyzing some of that material.
The pleasure of analyzing this material.
Yeah. It's got a flavor of its own. Let's put it this way. So what we found out was that about a kind of a third of the material is fat, as we expected. Another third was about another third was water, and then you got other components which are either soil, grits, metals, but also other, which obviously mainly wipes or things that shouldn't be in the sewer. So flushable or unflushable, that shouldn't be in the sewer. So when we kind of looked at that composition, we thought, okay, so but how does it form? Why do we have this fatberg forming? We never had this problem before, and we kind of looked at how they were found in the sewers, the formation in the sewers, and they kind of form around the level where the water level is in the sewer. So they start growing between the air and the water level, and then kind of as the water level goes up and down, that kind of deposit start forming, and then when it's full, it goes up at the top. And of course, it's not just fat. We thought that there's a lot of reaction. As I said, it's a messy science. There's a lot of reaction that could have caused that deposit, and we start kind of uncoupling this reaction and trying to understand. So there's at least four sort of reaction that we think are actively involved into the deposit formation. So one is fat solidification. There's a process of saponification, which I'm going to explain in a minute, which might not be the triggering, but it does happen for sure. There's a biofilm formation, so you can imagine, what kind of microorganisms grow in the sewers, and of course there's protein precipitation, but also starch seems to play a massive part into the deposit. So it's complicated. It's not so straightforward. So fat solidification. If you think about your when you cook your roast dinner, you have your chicken, put it in the oven, take it out. You got your layer, of fat. Leave it next to the sink. You get that solid sort of layer at the top, and that is animal fat. Animal fat are less are saturated fat and tends to be solid at ambient temperature, whereas the unsaturated fats and vegetable oil usually are liquid at room temperature. So that what happens also into the sewer. So if you pour, and you shouldn't do that, no one should do that, you pour your roast, the fat from your roast dinner down the drains. That will happen, that in the drain. So you will have that solidification happening. We also have this reaction called saponification. Now, if you think about the olden day when our great grandmother, I don't think my grandmother did it, but my great grandmother probably did, made soap. They made soap from fat and ashes and heat. Obviously there is a kind of a strong reaction in the sewer. It happens, it can happen. We don't think is the triggering mechanism, but it seems to kind of happen as the fatberg matures, right? Okay. So you got that the Fatberg, when we dug out the Fatberg was quite hard. When if you think about that, the consistency is soap-like consistency.
Oh, so I kind of assumed it was almost, like margarine or lard or something like that, but actually no. Like hard bathroom soap.
Yeah, it's actually. I'm giving a shake. I'm giving a shake to both of them. I'm not cheating. Yeah, so no, it's actually quite hard. We had to work with the scalpel to remove all the things. And if you see some of the picture of the wipes, that grease sticks to is quite hard material.
Wow.
So that we think that's a kind of a secondary kind of reaction that happens and solidify this deposit. But also we have sort of soluble soap, which we use for our personal care, which can become insoluble when we have hard water. Again, if you think about having a bath or washing your hands with an old-fashioned soap in a hard water area, you will have that. The soap will create that kind of scum around the bath, and that's nothing other than soluble to insoluble soap.
Okay.
Again, that's something we think happens in the sewers as well. So that's another reaction that will happen. And obviously, London is quite hard water, so that's possibly one explanation. So, as I said, where are fatty acids that help, that solidify or saponify? So mainly from obviously the cooking activities. And again, we had a study, we had a PhD student looking at the sort of proportion of fat coming from household and fat coming from restaurants, and the majority of it unfortunately come from restaurants, because we have become very kind of it's normal for us to go out now. In the olden days we didn't go out so much, so we have a much richer diet than before. So that's where the fat coming from. So if I again, as a back of the fat calculation, edible oil consumption in Europe was about 30 million ton per year in 2018. And I've done a bit of a calculation on that, and I think disposing drain is about 3.2 million ton per year in Europe.
Right.
Okay. Right. So, and in the UK is not much less than that. Again, just to give you an idea of how much could come from the soap, fatty acid salt using personal care product in Europe, again, I only got European data, are 0.8 million ton per year. So even if we throw them all into the sewer, we are still about 4 times less than what we do with cooking activities. So I'm not blaming the cosmetic industry. So there's also, we talked about another potential process, which is biofilm formation. As I said, microorganisms are amazing. They can do amazing things. They grow everywhere. They grow inside us, they grow outside us. And yeah, they grow on, that's in my picture, I've got a pipe of clean water. You can imagine what happened in an organic rich environment. So that biofilm will help consolidate that deposit, so they will grow on the surface of the sewers, on the surface of the fat deposit, and they will kind of use the deposit, grow around the deposit, etc. So that will help consolidate. We got other reaction happening. Again, this is something that came to me one day. I was having a coffee in London and realized that every time someone has a cappuccino, they rinse the milk jug and pour it down the drain. Milk is quite fat rich, but also contains a lot of protein that salt out quite easily. Again, if you leave your milk in the fridge for a week, you got that salting out. The pH of the milk changes, and you got precipitation of the protein. Again, that's something that can happen very easily in Suez, and that precipitation could be one of the triggering factors. And I haven't put it down here, but again, we think starch is also a kind of a potential culpable. Again, starch is very kind of sticky material, and that can be used by microorganisms and produce some more deposit.
So this is when people drained their pasta and stuff?
Yeah, pasta, rice, anything.
Wow.
So as I said, it's not so straightforward, but because Fatberg tend to happen mainly near in sort of a restaurant-rich area, that kind of is quite a kind of an easy sort of assumption to make.
Yeah. Okay.
And of course, we have wipes to cement it. So wipes that are flushed on the toilets. I'm kind of trying to get my kind of experiments working a little bit. It's not working as well as I would have liked, but I'm going to show you what's happening.
Okay.
So the wipes don't tend to degrade straight away when they are flushed down the toilet. The wipes are biodegradable, means that they can be degraded in an environment, but it doesn't mean that they degrade fast. And they might be compostable, for example, which means that they need temperature and certain type of bacteria to degrade. So once they are in the sewers, they kind of attach to the fat. They can attach to that, or they can just sort of attach to the wall of the sewers, and then of course the fat can attach to them, and it's a combination. So the wipe acts as a surface, but can also act as a kind of point of attachment. So so if I now show you so I'll give it another shake. Right, so this is my toilet paper. Okay, so you can see we have been talking for about 5 minutes, but you can see it's all nicely broken down. And if I show you at the end of the talk, that will be almost completely degraded. The 2 strips of biodegradable wipes, you can see they're not even remotely trying to degrade. So they got exactly the same shape, and so that's the difference. And that's why wipes are a problem in sewers. They might degrade, but usually by the time they reach a Fatberg, they will be very happily attached to the Fatberg and stay as they are. So what can we do with this material? What can we do with the Fatberg, or is there anything that we can do with this fat? So in the past, fog or grease was actually collected during the war for the glycerin. So the fat is mainly composed of triglyceride, and triglyceride are a backbone of glycerol or glycerin, and 3-chain with attached 3-chain of fatty acid. So for the energy recovery, we always look at, the long chain fatty acid part, but during the war was the glycerin that they wanted to extract from the fat. So I found these two nice kind of posture. There's dynamite in that grease, which take it to your butcher. So, but then that, it's a nice kind of way of saying, in the past, we did used to reuse our waste, and we've kind of become,
just throw it away.
Yeah. So, where do we recover energy from this material? So you might say, well, it's easy, just dig out this fatberg, a little bit like in a mine, and get energy out of it. Yes and no. Okay, so the material starts the journey. I call it the journey through the sewers in a different form. So when we pour the material down the drain, and again, it doesn't necessarily has to be the fat from your roast dinner. It's just the fat that comes out from your cooking activities. So your oil from your salad, the fat from your steak, the fat from whatever you're eating, your pasta. So that material is quite clean, is mixed with some organic, mixed with water. Once it goes into the sewers, is obviously mixed with sewers water, but it's still a relatively clean material. As we kind of progress the journey in the sewers, obviously there's more effluents, different type of effluents coming into the sewers. At pumping station, we got usually what we call floating balls, they become kind of ball shaped like, and tends to float, or just deposit around the pumping, the level of the water, and they are mixed with other stuff. And by the time we come to the sewage treatment work, they're still fat and fat-like material, but they are very contaminated. And so we looked at the energy recovery, the calorific value, and as we were expecting, the further we go from the production, so the production place to the water treatment, the less energy the material contains. So it's contaminated. There's other stuff with it. So not only it makes sense to collect them at the front end, because obviously we avoid the deposit forming, but also we can recover more energy.
Yeah, right.
So, and that can be, that material can be recovered by with a grease trap. They're like small boxes that separate out water and oil, and the oil can be sort of separated out at source, so at the restaurant, obviously by specialized people. I wouldn't open that grease trap in a kitchen environment. Yeah. So that could be done, and that would allow us to recover energy at source, a better material, and then sort of decrease the amount of deposit that would form along the way. So we had a student which work on this kind of catchment level energy recovery to identify for Thames Water where was the best place to recover this material, and the best way to recover energy. And so what we find, one of the ways for recovering energy from used cooked oil, so the oil coming out of a fryer, for example, is biodiesel. That's what a lot of companies do. McDonald's does it as well. But this material comes from, the material that I'm talking about comes from a grease trap. So there's some water embedded, some other organic. So it's not exactly the same. It can be turned into biodiesel, but what we found was that water company have got anaerobic digester, which are those processes that produce biogas in anaerobic condition. They use it for treating their sludge. And we looked at adding this material, which has got a very high calorific value, to that process. And what we found out was that, yes, they can be digested. They actually are good in a reactor, and they can produce up to, so the material that could be recovered from the Thames water catchment, now let me find, it's about 95,000 tonnes per year. So that's quite a lot of material. If, Thames water sort of had a system for collecting this material from the restaurants. And that would produce about 222 gigawatt per hour per year as biogas. Wow. So that's a lot of energy, and that would cover about 19% of the company energy needs. So it's actually it would be a very kind of nice way of avoiding the deposit and creating renewable energy.
Yeah, that's really win-win.
Yes, absolutely. So just want to show you again my experiment. Just that this is the toilet paper that is gone all mushy, and the two biodegradable wipes. So I can take one out if you want to have a look. It hasn't changed any. The shape is still the same.
It's still pretty much as it was when you put it in.
Correct. So that, in a nutshell, is the science of Fatberg. Cool. I'm still working on the deposit formation. I've now left Cranfield, but Cranfield have got now a 200-meter sewers, which was created on purpose for studying this deposit. I'm still involved in the project, and one PhD student is doing this kind of science of deposit formation. So just that I want to say thank you to everybody, because it's not just me. It's taken a big group of people and a lot of funding to go through this. And so I also want to thank the Museum of London, because fantastic people, Vicky, Sharon and Andy. Without them, the Fatberg would still be anonymous. They really brought the Fatberg to life, and really I think they taught a lot of people about in a very simple way why it's important to not put fat down the drains. Another thing, there's some people crazier than me about the Fatberg, and this is Tilly and Kate, and another group of people. Michael is the musician, and Victorine is the director, and Rachel is the producer of Undermine the Fatberg Musical. Okay, so I'm very passionate. I had a preview of some of the songs. They are fantastic. it was supposed to go live in April, and of course, because of lockdown, everything is being postponed. I've checked on the website. The current date for the first of this musical is the 26th of January. They're really talented people. It's a fantastic, great, crazy piece of musical.
Cool, right. Get your tickets, get online, get your tickets, go see Fatberg the Musical. Awesome. Thank you very much, Raffi. I think it's really interesting that I kind of figured that this would be kind of like a gross out quantum source where we just think about the stuff that goes on in the sewer. But actually, it went in kind of directions of sort of sustainable energy that I never even realized were possible. I think that's really, really interesting. So thanks very much. I did have a couple of questions. Obviously, there's when we throw things down the drain, we kind of just forget about it. And there's obviously more than just things flushing through the drains. There's chemical reactions going on in the sewers as well. Can we use that to our advantage? And is there a way to sort of chemically react the Fatberg out rather than just having to mine it? Or is that just there's too many knock-on consequences?
Yeah, no, I think there are additives that can be put down the drain, the sewers. There's also bio-additives and that's one of the study that we have been doing is about bio-additions. But again, is a complicated science because what works on one piece of the sewers might not work on another because your water composition could be completely different. Condition could be completely different.
Okay.
And just to give you an idea of another wacky, it's not so wacky, but it's another interesting project that we have been doing in collaboration with Sheffield University is about recovering heat from sewers. So one of the idea was to use the sewers as a kind of a sink, of sort of discharging some heat or recovering the heat. And so that the point that we were involved because obviously Sheffield was worried about are we creating more deposit by changing the temperature of the water.
Yeah.
And so it's quite a kind of complicated process because you can't apply the same rule to all to the whole Suez network. And when I started, I remember meeting some of the engineers and say, okay, so what's the how fast the water flows? It depends. Okay, how big are the sewers? It depends. Are they aerobic? It depends. And it's like, okay, so how do I know? How do I go about it now? So it's more complicated than it looks like. But definitely we can definitely use the sewers as a reactor, and that's one of the many applications that we can do.
Right, cool. Right, Raffi, I think we'll leave it there. What I would say is thanks very much for the talk again. I didn't check if you were on Twitter or not, but if anyone out there in quantum source world wants to put a question to Raffi, then you've got a Twitter account?
Yeah, it's Raffaella Villa. I don't know. Let me check.
On Quantum Source, we'll post to Raffi, and then you can check out Raffi's account, and you can put any questions to her that you want, or just post them on the Quantum Source feed, and we'll be able to see them. Before we go, just give us one more look at the experiment.
Oh yes. Oh, sorry. Yes. So that's again. I want to swirl a bit the toilet paper. Yeah, all gone. You can see.
Yeah,
it's all gone. There's no way this can form a deposit. And these are the two strips of
there.
Biodegradable, which are still there.
It doesn't look promising, does it? Right.
No, it will degrade if I leave it there enough. It will degrade, but not in the time that we want it to degrade.
Right. Cool. Well, thank you very much then, Rafi, and we'll say bye-bye, and thank you again.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye now. So thanks very much to Rafi. It's really amazing where you find sources of renewable energy these days. And I have to say that I wasn't expecting a quantum source that would both whet my appetite with talk of steak and pasta and would also completely repulse me with the vile things that go on within our sewers. Now, if you enjoyed that, in a certain sense of the word, then keep your eyes peeled on the Quantum Source Twitter and Instagram feeds. We will be posting more videos to keep you educated and entertained during lockdown times. Just remains for me to say that I've been Dr. Adam Booth, this has been Quantum Source, you've been great, stay cool.